now like to introduce our next presenter, Neil Barringham, who will be joined by Kim Chidgey. Neil is a community worker who works for a place to belong in Brisbane. Neil also enjoys interacting with people about how we can build community-based supports. He's going to talk to us today about the things he has learned from his work and how he can assist people to belong to the community.
Thanks. It's great to be here. It's a great honour to share the day with you, and I don't think I've had a day where I've cried so much for a very long time. The stories have been inspiring and honouring. It's great to be here. Excuse me. It was a Friday evening way back in 1993, I think. I was at our local fortnightly community meal in the inner city Brisbane suburb of West End. And I expect there would have been the usual din of people chattering, meals being served, people eating, and piano being played. I remember wandering around the crowd, around through the hall, looking for a place to sit, and I found a guy who was sitting by himself, and I sat down with my plate of food, and I think I said something like, "G'day, I'm Neil." And I think he said something back like, "Hi, I'm Kim." And we then started to chat, and before long I found out that this person, Kim, had just arrived in Brisbane a couple of days earlier, and he'd been moved into one of the supported accommodation facilities in our area. Some of the residents had been coming up to the community meal that night. They'd invited him along, and here he was. Now, back in those times, I wasn't a disability worker. I didn't see myself as a professional social worker, and I wasn't a paid service provider. I was simply a local citizen who was involving myself in a local community activity which was aimed at opening up a space to meet, welcome and relate with local people. Therefore, when I sensed Kim's isolation and interest in our conversation, and I said to him something like, "Would you like to come over my place for dinner sometime?" I was not impeded by any thoughts about the need to maintain professional distance. I didn't have to do an internal double take as I wondered how I would convince my colleagues about blurring the boundaries between professional and friendship community engagement. I wasn't feeling nervous at all about how inviting Kim home would mean a risk audit or a risk management report that I'd need to submit before I got the approval to carry out this off-the-wall activity. No, I simply wanted to invite him home for a meal, and so I did. I've been asked to speak here about the contribution and value of freely given relationships, and here, in my first couple of minutes, I hope you can see some of the enormous contribution of people from the community and what they can offer. Community members are not ensnared and impeded by professional thinking, by professional education, or by nervousness about sustaining and maintaining professional boundaries, and by the need to be compliant with and seek approval from professional parameters and protocols. Community members don't see a file first before they see the person, and they aren't as likely to see someone through the lens of a diagnosis or a label. And in mental health, these realities are profoundly important. So when Kim came over for dinner a few nights later, he met my wife, my cat, and our housemates. I remember a congenial conversation, including hearing about his interest in gardening. Looking out my window into my weed-filled garden, I again had no issue with professional boundaries or wondering how this would fit in any case plan. I simply pointed out my garden and said if he ever wanted to come and do some gardening, he was welcome to come over. He said he would, and he did. Before long, our garden was improving in its appearance, and we were getting to know Kim. As we did so, we began hearing about a person who was caught up with psychiatric services, the police, social workers, and that he had run away from home. Kim kept talking about himself as a psych patient. He shared with us how self-harm was an issue, and we noticed many scars from instances of self-harm. Now, Kim is here today, and let's meet him and find out in his words what was going on for him at that time. I'm glad that you're here with us, Kim. Come join us. Now, when I invited Kim to come and be part of this presentation, I told him there might be about 50 people here. And I didn't mention microphones. So this is a pretty big step. So Kim, was that 1993? Okay. Do you remember that community meal where I met you?
Yes.
You can. And can you tell us what was going on for you at that time, what was happening in your life, and what it was like, you know, when I said g'day to you and invited you over for dinner?
The police had just brought me back down from northern Queensland and dropped me off in Brisbane, where I'd been handed over to Salvation Army, and they put me in a local hostel. The manager of the hostel I didn't know Brisbane. They just sort of dropped me off there. And then, yeah, when the rest of the people went up to the community meal, I just followed them up because I didn't know, you know, something to do. And yeah, you sat down and you treated me as a human being. You just sat down and talked to me as a human being. For the previous 15 years, all I'd known is the psychiatric system and being a psych patient, and that's all you were to them, a psych patient. I was either in a psych hospital or in a group home. But you came and sat down, and everyone else that was there, and talked to me as a normal human being. So that was something new and something special. Okay.
You came over for dinner and
Yeah.
You said you like gardening.
I did.
I pointed out my weed field garden.
It's a good garden.
What was that like for you?
You invited me into your home. I mean, I had never had that before, and you trusted me to come and play in your garden. It gave me a sense, apart from my self-esteem building, because you invited me into your house, but you gave me something to do. The psych system isn't interested in giving people anything to do. We're just patients, crazy people. So it was really something good and special and meaningful to me to be invited to play in your garden. It was good.
Okay. And as we spent time with you, Kim, I remember you met a few other people around our network who'd also experienced the mental health system, and you began having these regular gatherings on our back deck. And three things I remember about those gatherings. Firstly, there was a lot of coffee and a lot of cigarettes smoked. Secondly, there was a strong critique of the mental health system that occurred in those chats. And the third thing was I wasn't welcome because I wasn't a psych patient. Now, looking back now, I see that what was happening there was some peer support and that you guys were chatting together. Can you remember that and can you recall what that was like for you?
Yes, it was... like anyone can explain to a normal person what it's like being in a psych hospital and being a psych patient, but unless you've actually experienced it, you don't know it. So for us, like Helen and Ganya and Mary and the others just getting together, and it was a way for us to sort of vent our feelings and our frustrations at all the injustices that had been done. And no offence, but you couldn't understand, and no amount of telling you, you'd get the knowledge, but you wouldn't know the feeling. It's the feeling. Yep. So it was good to just be able to sit around and exchange experiences and vent.
Yep. Good. Okay, so there was important peer support then. So being comfortable middle-class people, this whole scene was a bit new to us, but fortunately our professional naivete meant we moved ahead with you rather than withdrawing. Because things were beginning to sound a bit complex. I remember at those times, you needed times of mental health treatment and going to hospital, and we visited you. A few months went by. I think we formed a bit of a informal circle of support around you, and we visited you when you were in hospitals. We wrote reports to your psychiatrists and treatment teams because we felt that living with us in community with the friendship and everyday ordinary involvements that you said you loved was better than being confined in really impersonal kind of mental health wards. A bit later, when the law caught up with you, we were stunned when you chose to go to the civil court rather than go to the mental health court. And you told us at the time that you chose the civil court because you would get a conviction and you would know for how long you'd be held and contained, rather than going to a psychiatric facility where you'd be at the hands of the psychiatrist and you wouldn't know how long before you were discharged. I mean, I was stunned at that time to hear that, Kim. Is that right? And can you unpack that a bit for us?
Yeah, I guess from the little that I did know at that time, yeah, because I had been in jail before I got bailed, so I'd been in the jail system and in the forensic system, the criminal mental health system. And jail was just so much better. There were things to do. People treated you as a normal person, whereas in the forensic hospital, John Oxley, yeah, you were a crazy person, and that's how you were treated. And they can keep you as long as they want. At least in jail, you get a minimum and a maximum. They can only keep you for so long. In the forensic hospital, John Oxley, they can keep you as long as they want. There's no end. There's nothing to do, and you're a crazy, stupid psych person. That's all you are.
That's pretty clear, isn't it? And so, Kim, you went to jail, and I remember there were some pretty important things that we were surprised about. It seemed like it was a positive experience because, firstly, you studied, you finished high school, you began correspondence university. Secondly, you made friendships with people there as you were working in the laundry. And when you were discharged from jail, you went back to jail quite often, visiting the friends you'd made there. And thirdly, you had work, you had structure, and you had things to do there. So jail was okay for you?
Yes, it was. It was. I was treated. Yeah, I might have been treated as a criminal, but I was treated as a normal person, which is a step up from being treated as a stupid psych patient. And having contact with the other people in the jail, like the friends I made, I'm still friends with 2 people from jail. They're my best friends because they treated me as a normal person. They didn't talk down to me. They treated me as an equal. And you and the others, the circle of support, it was as if, like, going from the psych system to the jail and then with you and the circle of friends, it was just, jail was like a stepping stone to, like, I had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet, and I was treated as a normal person, not as a psych person, and my self-esteem grew and was just better than psych system.
Okay. So looking back now, the sense I have is that your sense of identity of who you were was originally very much about the psychiatric system and being a psychiatric patient, but during that time, in terms of people spending time with you and the peer support you had, the growing friendships and contacts you had doing everyday ordinary type things like gardening, meant that psychiatric identity was not so dominant in your life. It wasn't so strong, but you were having other elements of your life that were strengthening.
Yes.
Would that be true?
Yes, yeah. When you're in the psych system, that's all you are, as a psych patient. But yeah, when getting to know you, there was a part of me that was, I loved gardening and loved animals. There were other parts of me that you and the others were bringing out. You weren't just, the psychiatric part was there, but it wasn't the only part. There were other parts, and they were the dominant parts. So I wasn't just a psych patient, I was other parts as well. And that's what you guys brought out and responded to.
Okay, and so since then you came out of jail, you became a registered wildlife carer. Kim's backyard in Brisbane was full of cages of wounded magpies and wounded possums that Kim was caring for and then let them go when they were okay again. You finished your university degree, you got work, and we actually employed you at a place to belong for a short time while you were assisting a man who'd come out of hospital. So there were these other elements of your life that were developing. So Kim, just looking back on that, do you have any other final things you'd like to say about where your life's come to now? I know you've left Brisbane, you've moved back down to Victoria to reconnect with family a little. Can you tell us about that, or your commitment to animals, or whether you're getting mental health treatment, those kind of things?
Yes, to reconnect with some of my family back here. Some I haven't reconnected with, and I choose not to. But that's, again, an important thing, because there's some parts of my family that I shouldn't be connected to, and I've decided, and that's a good thing. I'm a foster carer of cats now, so I take in stray cats, get them desexed and rehome them. I still have contact with psych services in Ballarat, but I have other things in my life as well. I'm not just a psych patient. This year I've taken up line dancing, so you know I'm meeting other people through line dancing and through the cats as well. We have a bit of a group of foster carers, and we go to markets to try to rehome the cats. So yes, I do still have contact with psych services when I need it, but I'm not just a psych patient. I'm other parts as well.
Fantastic. So this conference is about one person at a time and about valued lives, valued roles. Is there any other final observations you'd like to make, Kim, about how important this has been for you or for people who are in contact with the mental health system or undergoing mental health treatment?
It's life-changing. To treat someone with a psychiatric illness as a human being is life-changing. I'll never forget those times up in Brisbane in the 90s with you and the others. It changed my life for the better. I mean, yeah, I can never thank you and the others enough. It is truly life-changing. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Good.
So, thanks, Kim. Well said. You have a seat if you want it. So I haven't met, or Kim and I haven't caught up since 2006 or so, because Kim has returned to this local area, and when Deb and PLA invited me to share here, it was I thought, oh, I'll call Kim and see if we can do this together. So it's been great to catch up with Kim again today and to just go over some of those important early community ventures in the 90s, around mental health and local community inclusion. So thank you, Kim, for coming down from Ballarat today and being part of the presentation. So that story illustrates some of the genesis of the spirit of what A Place to Belong is seeking to do in Brisbane. There's this vision to work with people whose identity might be dominated by the mental health experience or their experience of the other systems around mental health, with people whose confidence or skills or opportunities may be shattered, limited or sabotaged by their own inner mental health experience as well as by their social experience of the treatment systems. Emerging out of our local community experience with people such as Kim, we're informed by a number of stories. We did some action research about inclusion in mental health and then received some funding to continue the inclusion work. And before long, this broadened into funding to support some people who are going through complex and challenging times. And then through our work, we've developed training as well, training elements. And so that communicates some of the early genesis of where A Place to Belong comes from. We saw support being offered and some effort going into entering community with people, but we felt much more substantial work could be done in terms of community inclusion. Our message has constantly been around the central question of how can we move from lines to spaces. By that I mean we see a lot of work being done in the mental health and disability sector by good people and good workers, but our constant plea is to encourage support people and carers to build not only their own relationship with the person they support, but also consider who else they can interact with or engage with as they're with the person, so that the line between them becomes a space. For example, I'm working with a man who's in a lock-up mental health ward in Brisbane at this very point in time. He's been there for 4 years, and the only people in his life have been his treatment team. And it's challenging to think about how can we move from a line to a space with that man, and I'll tell more of that story tomorrow. The movement from counselling or therapy or clinical support to community engagement is essentially about moving from a line to a space. There is something profoundly significant in that transition. It speaks of power sharing, it speaks of a role change from client to citizen, and it speaks of a dynamic for a person to author their own future outside the service provider modality. And that's what I hear coming through Kim's story earlier. As helpful as counselling, therapy or clinical support might be, if service providers and carers believe in citizenship and community inclusion, we need to constantly interact with the challenge to move from lines to spaces. And this is a key aspect of recovery in mental health as well. A simple model which summarises our work in working towards inclusion is threefold. Firstly, we need to start in our own heads. We need vision. Our work does not begin with technique or with method. It begins with imagination, heart, spirit, creativity, passion and preparation. Secondly, we need to create the opportunities or support opportunities or nurture opportunities. And we need to support and open up these opportunities for people to participate, contribute and mix with others. We've heard many stories like that today. And thirdly, we need to support. We often need to ensure that those opportunities are adequately supported and safeguarded. So out of that kind of vision, a Place to Belong's mission statement has emerged, connoting mutuality, common humanity and strengths focus. Our mission is to encourage the building of communities where each person's unique strengths and struggles are valued and we each feel we have a place to belong. Yeah, so you'll notice there's no mention of mental illness in that mission statement. You'll notice there's a strong sense of mutuality, that each of us are in this together. And you'll notice that that mission statement communicates about people's strengths as well as their struggles. And so our agency is a small agency that's working to encourage a process of inclusion for people who experience mental health challenges. We do this by developing and encouraging the capacity of the community to welcome and include others. We employ part-time community inclusion workers or connection workers who come alongside isolated people to find ways to link them with others or find valued roles. We have a reading, writing and computer program as well, which you'll hear about tomorrow from one of our leaders, Carmel, who will be here to share about that. And now and again, government funds us to work doing mental health recovery work with people who need more intense support. And we offer training and support for organisations and agencies. We have a small office in West End in Brisbane and we employ 14 people part-time. Here's a picture of the building where we have a small office space along with a number of other community groups. That's my office desk in the front there. I enjoy having meetings and appointments under the trees. In terms of people we work with, we try and avoid the term clients and we talk about people we're involved with, people who are participating in the work. Primarily that's people with mental health challenges who want to be better connected, and people who want to make a difference as well. Agencies, groups, clubs, organisations, churches who want to be more inclusive, and we work with the community broadly as well. Some of the primary frameworks we work to is inclusion frameworks, where our framework of inclusion is very much around not so much fixing people, but more finding the fit. So searching for people's place to belong in their local community. We work to a mental health recovery framework, which isn't so much a clinical recovery model, which means the absence of symptoms, but it's more a personal recovery model, which is about people's right to author their own future. Social role valorisation is another framework we work with in terms of searching for and supporting and looking for positive and valued social roles. A strengths model we work with, that our work is in inclusion is fundamentally around working with people's aspirations, hopes and strengths. And then a communitarian model where in this mental health context we see that there's enormous authority and power in the community sector and that we need to work with that and support that. Deb asked me to talk about some of the dilemmas and challenges we face in our work. Certainly formalisation is a growing challenge. I don't know what it's like for you in Victoria, but in Queensland, volunteering has become an increasingly formal process. Any relationships we facilitate as an agency bring people close to the definition of a volunteer, which often necessitates criminal history checks, code of conducts, privacy agreements and other paperwork, and negotiating through this and around this is a real challenge. I don't know that my approach to Kim in 1993 would have been as heartfelt if I had to fill in a whole lot of forms before meeting you, Kim. So the question is, how do we work with the spontaneous, organic, heartfelt responses of community members in this increasingly formalised service provision milieu? And then corporatisation. There are some benefits of being part of corporate structures, but one of the risks is that accountability can be accountability up more than accountability down. For small community organisations such as A Place to Belong, which are part of larger corporate structures, The challenges are there for us to work out our space in a larger corporate structure and be assertive to safeguard accountability down as well as up. Thirdly, being the handmaiden of government, we need to keep our heart and mind clear and strong, rather than just doing environmental scans and searching for whatever available funding is there. We need to keep our hearts, minds and mission clear. And finally, sustainability and leadership development. It's a good thing to generate an organisation that does well for a time. However, sustainability has to be considered if the fruits of the work are to be long-lasting. And we're facing this challenge at a place to belong right now, where we're seeking to develop a new generation of leadership who are across the vision and mission. Context. So our building, the office, the signage, all have a part to play. Secondly, inclusion is supported when staff and volunteers and any people, any constituents are selected and trained in skills and models which support inclusion, not just on issues of compliance, paperwork and formalisation. Thirdly, inclusion is a way of thinking, working, living and being that is best supported when this life practice permeates all aspects and levels of an agency's work, when the policies, practices and procedures are flexible and prioritised around people's needs for belonging and connectedness. Fourthly, inclusion is supported when staff and volunteers are encouraged to reflect on their own experience of marginalisation, because our work is a human work, not just a dispassionate professional exercise. Inclusion is supported when all agency meetings model community engagement, involving a mix of people rather than streaming people into various separated meetings. In mental health, I don't know how your context is, but often in mental health people can be streamed into consumer groups and carer groups and worker groups. We enjoy having workshops where there's a whole mixture of people across those various and other streams. Inclusion is supported when one of the knowledge bases of the work is centred around honouring and learning from people's stories and lived experience. So stories are very important for us in our work. And because of the exclusion and isolation that people experience, often the first critical step towards inclusion is in our own imaginations. We need to imagine together for something better. And inclusion work is best supported when due consideration is given to building capacity of communities in tandem with working to support isolated individuals. So there's some of the principles that we're passionate about, that we're committed to, that help us deal with some of the threats and some of the challenges to our work that I mentioned earlier. Perhaps I can just finish with a brief story. A woman approached us a few months ago saying that she wanted to develop her literacy and numeracy skills. She then became part of one of the processes that where we linked her to someone who was assisting her in that work. But in meeting her, we realised there was a whole compounding of other issues. There were serious mental health issues. She was homeless, living in her car, and there were court cases pending, and there were a range of other challenges as well. So our response has been, firstly, to seek to respond to housing. We helped to link into one of the largest housing providers in Brisbane. She spent a whole day in their waiting room and wasn't able to see anyone. No one had time to see her. But fortunately, because we're working in a very connected way in our community, we were able to lean over the back fence near where we work to a household of young people who were sharing house and being involved in their community together, and asked them if they'd be willing to meet her and offer her some short-term accommodation. So we found no helpful response from a large multi-million-dollar housing organisation, but in terms of being part of a connected community, we were able to find a household who that very day was able to welcome her and invite her in for a short-term crisis accommodation, which very soon became medium-term, and she still is part of that shared house. She wanted to learn to drive, and we found someone who was spending time with her, assisting her to drive. We found people who were assisting her in preparation for her court cases, and one of those court cases has occurred and is going very well. So that would be a small example of working with someone, seeking to support someone through some profoundly vulnerable times. Lorna Hallahan in Adelaide says, "Each day we totter on planks we hope will become bridges." That's very much how I feel in our work. We totter on planks, we hope we'll become bridges. But in terms of hearing Kim's story, it's great to hear when sometimes those planks do become bridges. Thank you very much.